Hello, and welcome to another episode of Women in Astronomy. I'm your host, Paula. Today we'll be talking about some astronauts who are women. These women are trained to go into space on spacecrafts. NASA allowed women to apply to the space program in 1978 after new anti-discrimination laws were implemented. Before, in the 1960s, some women successfully underwent the astronaut selection process but were not allowed to be astronauts because of their gender. This included the Mercury 13. These are 13 women who outperformed the men who were being considered to be the first astronauts. It was required in the 1960s that astronauts have piloting experience, which meant that those people who were selected were often military test pilots, and women were often excluded from this field during this time. In 1963, Valentina Tereshkova, a Soviet cosmonaut, was launched on Vostok 6 and became the first woman to fly in space. Her voyage took around 70 hours and included 48 orbits of Earth. It would be almost 20 years later before another woman went into space. The first American woman to go to space was astronaut and physicist Sally Ride. She was the third woman overall to go to space and the youngest American, even to this day, to go to space. In 1983, Sally Ride was launched on the Space Shuttle Challenger STS-7. She was the flight engineer on this mission. She operated the shuttle's mechanical arm and conducted experiments. She went on another shuttle mission on the STS-41G in 1984. After her space missions, Ride went on to be the director of the California Space Science Institute. She worked as a physics professor at the University of California, San Diego, and she was a member of the President's Committee of Advisors on Science and Technology. Sally Ride was passionate about improving science education and inspiring women to pursue STEM. She started an organization called Sally Ride Science, which encourages children to pursue STEM, and she wrote children's books about space exploration. Sally Ride was a generally private person about her personal life. Unfortunately, she died in 2012 from pancreatic cancer. After Ride's death, Tam O'Shaughnessy opened up about her romantic relationship with Sally Ride. Along with being the first American woman in space, she's also recognized as the first gay astronaut. Sally Ride famously had to deal with many misogynistic questions because of her gender. She was asked if space would affect her ability to have children, what kind of makeup she was going to take into space, if she cried when the simulator malfunctioned, and many other questions that the male astronauts just didn't get asked. Mae Jemison was the first African American woman in space. In 1992, Jemison launched with Endeavour and worked as the mission specialist, conducting crew-related scientific experiments on the space shuttle. Jemison watched the Apollo missions launch when she was younger, but she was upset that there were no female astronauts. She was inspired by Nichelle Nichols, who played Lieutenant Uhura on the TV series Star Trek, and she had a dream to go to space from a very young age. Jemison graduated from Stanford University with a degree in chemical engineering and African American studies. Jemison was one of the few African American students in her class. She was president of the Black Student Union, and because she had a passion for dancing, she choreographed a show called Out of the Shadows about the African American experience. After graduating from Stanford, she later got her MD from Cornell University. She worked in the Peace Corps and then went on to have her own practice as a doctor. After Sally Ride became the first American woman to go to space, Jemison decided to apply to NASA's space program herself and was later accepted and assigned to the Endeavour mission. While in space, she conducted experiments on herself and fellow crew members about weightlessness and motion sickness. After leaving NASA, Jemison started some nonprofit organizations, international space summer camps. She wrote children's books, worked as a professor of environmental studies at Dartmouth, and to this day continues to advocate for women and students of color to pursue an interest in science. Ochoa was NASA's first Hispanic female astronaut, becoming the first Hispanic woman to go to space after serving on a 9-day mission aboard the Space Shuttle Discovery in 1993. She's flown to space 4 times in total and has spent almost 1,000 hours in orbit. In 1999, she was the mission specialist on mission STS-96 on Discovery, which was the first shuttle mission to dock with the International Space Station. On the STS-56 mission, Ochoa also became the first person to play the flute in low Earth orbit. She was a classical flautist for 25 years, so she took her flute with her on the mission and played some songs for her fellow crew members. Later, Ochoa served as the director of NASA Johnson Space Center. She was the first Hispanic director and second woman to hold this position. Currently, she serves on many boards for the National Science Board and Stanford University. Peggy A. Whitson holds the U.S. record for most days in space, having spent 665 days in space. After completing her graduate work at Rice University, she started working at NASA Johnson Space Center as a biochemistry researcher and then as a supervisor for the biochemistry research group at KRUG International. She was selected as an astronaut candidate in 1996 and later served as a deputy chief of the astronaut office. As an astronaut, she's done 2 6-month tours, the first on Expedition 5 in 2002, where she was named the first NASA science officer. She conducted 21 investigations in human life sciences and microgravity sciences, as well as commercial payloads. In the second tour, she was the station commander for the Expedition 16 in 2008. Also, Whitson was the first female non-military chief of the astronaut office. These are only some of the amazing women astronauts. Although some of them have faced hardships at earlier times in history, they are all valuable crew members on their missions, and they've inspired millions with their out-of-this-world accomplishments. More recently, astronauts Jessica Meyer and Christina Koch performed the first all-female spacewalk in NASA's history. Christina Koch went to the North Carolina School of Science and Mathematics and then North Carolina State University. The spacewalk was a beautiful moment that I was able to watch live just last year. The number of women in space sciences and the American Astronaut Corps has increased significantly and is now up overall to nearly 50% men and 50% women. NASA's planning to send the first woman to the moon by 2024 as a part of the Artemis mission. So keep your eyes on the sky and be sure to look up other women astronauts like Kalpana Chawla, Anne McClain, Stephanie Wilson, Nicole Stott, Anusha Ansari, and so many more. I'll see you in the next episode of Women in Astronomy. Thanks for joining!